Hi everyone, I hope you're well. Today I'm going to be looking at my collection of Art Spectrum Artist Watercolour paints, and these are professional quality paints. They are an Australian company, Art Spectrum. They've been around for quite a few decades, and I know from looking on YouTube myself that there really isn't very much information out there about these paints, so I'm guessing that's because maybe there aren't so many Australian YouTubers or anything like that, and I think I've seen that they are quite difficult to get overseas, but I know they are available because I have seen them on Jackson's Art and other places like that, and I'm sure you can get them on Amazon. But I thought I would go through, have a look at the colours I have in my collection, swatch them out and do a painting as well. So let's get into it. Alright, the tubes. They come in a 10 milliliter tube. Let's see what information they have. Okay, on the back they actually do have quite a lot of information. I went and looked this up online because there is a PDF version with all of the info about these, and I will be linking all of the information below so you can read the printouts and the information by Art Spectrum. But on here we've got the pigments which come in the colour, the light fastness, permanence level, which is a star rating here, and that's about it. On the PDF, they also have more information like opacity, whether it's granulating or staining and things like that as well. Let's just take a look at another one here. So also there's a series number on here, Australian turquoise being one of the more expensive ones. This one, as we can see, it says ASTM not tested, which is the American standard of something or other. I'll put that on the screen because I really don't remember what it is. But when I was looking online, I found that some of them actually have 80 SM scores and other ones have blue wool scale scores, which is the British version, so that's quite odd. Let's have a look. I think Spectrum Yellow was one of them. Yeah, so see, it says ASTM not tested. This is actually on the blue wool scale and it's considered... Okay, this one actually has a blue wool scale of 7, so it is very light fast, but it's interesting that half of them are kind of on the American standard testing and other ones are on the British blue wool scale, so I don't know, that's quite odd. So these are the colours I have at the moment: Spectrum Crimson, Spectrum Red, Pilbara Red, Australian Red Gold, Spectrum Yellow, Lemon Yellow, Australian Green Gold, Australian Leaf Green Dark, Phthalo Green, Australian Turquoise, Tasman Blue, Spectrum Blue, Phthalo Blue, Prussian Blue, Flinders Blue Violet, Flinders Red Violet, Australian Grey, Yellow Ochre, Warm Sepia and Payne's Grey. As you can see, I have quite a number of these which have the word Australian in them. They do have a set of, I think it's around 12 paints, which are Australian colours. I have most of them, although I've discovered since that there are 2 others and I don't ever remember seeing those before, so I'm not sure if they're new or if I just completely missed them, because I was really hoping to have all of the Australian colours. When I show you my swatch chart later, you will be able to see the pigment numbers and you'll see that they're not particularly in any way unique, they just may have unique mixes of different pigments. Some of the Australian ones here are Pilbara Red. Now the Pilbara is a large desert region in Western Australia and it has a lot of red earth, so that's where they get that colour from. And what else? We've got Australian Green Gold, Australian Red Gold, Australian Leaf Green Dark, the turquoise is Australian, Tasman Blue, the Tasman Sea is between Australia and New Zealand, Flinders Blue Violet, which is actually Mineral Violet, it even says it on there, and Flinders Red Violet, which is Theo Violet, that's an interesting one, and Australian Grey. So these are the ones that I have that are uniquely Australian, but then I also just ended up with a few other colours which I thought would, make a decent palette. Art Spectrum do have quite a lot of paints in their range, and I'll put the number up here somewhere because also as soon as I've started this I realised I forgot to look how many paints there actually are. It would be nice to get all of the paints, and maybe one day I will do that, but for now I've just got a relatively smallish collection. I've put them all into one of these tins. Look, I've labelled it with my label maker. I think this was one of the tins I got from the Prima marketing sets, and I thought it would be good for my Australian colours. It fits 20 half pans, and so I basically got 20 colours to fit in it. And I've cleaned it up a bit as much as I can, but as you can see it is very well used. This is one of my earliest paint palettes, and I've used it quite a lot off and on. I have filled it up again, but you can see the yellow ochre in particular does get some cracking. And I also found that these two, which are the Flinders Red Violet and Blue Violet, and also the Pilbara Red, they were cracking really badly, and so I actually added a few drops of glycerine to each of them, and they work so much better now. So if you get paints that crack, and you can see there's a bit of cracking in a few others, mix in a little glycerine, maybe 1, 2, 3 drops, and you'll find it makes a huge difference in keeping them nice and non-cracked. I can't think of a word. Oh my goodness. Always when I start filming I just go blank. But anyway, so this is my set. I'm going to swatch it out. So I was very organised, and I've drawn up a swatch chart in advance, and on here I've written the name of the paint, the pigment numbers, and whether it's transparent or opaque, and semi-transparent, and then the little letters up here that stands for staining, G's for granulation, and I think that's about it. So basically I've just gone off the information sheet that they have in the PDF and done my charts from that. Now I'm going to swatch them out and talk about them as I go. Okay, I'm just wetting the paper because I like to do that before I put the swatches down so we can see the paint run. And our first one here is Spectrum Crimson, which is PV19. And you can see how much that paint runs. I was quite surprised because I'd forgotten about how much some of these ones do. PV19 is more commonly known as quinacridone rose, and you can see it's a beautiful pinky red colour, and I really love this. PV19 is actually a pigment violet, would you believe? So it's so pretty though, I really love it, and I always like to have that. Now I'm skipping a square because I always make them run. I'm going straight into Pilbara Red. This is made up of quinacridone rose, would you believe, that PV19, and also PR101 and PBR7, so we have like a earthier red and a brown in there. This is a pretty transparent colour, and as you can see it's very, very earthy and pretty. I really like this one. Okay, I'm just totally interrupting myself here. Oh, look at my pretty Traveller's Notebook clip. I really do like this. This is brass, and I could not find my other regular bulldog clip, so I've pulled this out, and it's so pretty, but it's very, very shiny on here. I have not been to the Pilbara region, but I have been to Uluru, which is in the Northern Territory and more right in the central part of Australia. But I did take some earth around, not actually from Uluru area itself, but a bit further out. I took a bit of a souvenir home, and this is some of the red earth that you get in the middle of Australia. Does it look like that? It's quite similar. And once again, probably the Pilbara is slightly different again, but this is the kind of red earth that you get in Australia in the outback. This is mostly what Australia is, this colour. It's only now that I'm recording this voiceover that I realise I've completely lost a clip of footage. I don't know where it is. It's not in the folder where I have all my files, so I really apologise for that. Maybe I forgot to turn the camera on, I don't know. But anyway, we've got Australian Green Gold, Phthalo Green, Tasman Blue, and now I'm painting out Phthalo Blue. This is Phthalo Blue green shade, and as you can see it runs across the page really beautifully, and it's a very, very lovely colour. Ah, man, I'm spewing over that. I just don't know what happened to it. Going on to the next one, we have Flinders Blue Violet, which is PV16 and is a mineral violet, if I remember correctly. It's very granulating and also semi-transparent. and it doesn't re-wet too badly. Quite often the mineral style ones can be a bit of a problem, but I found that as long as you wet them a little bit beforehand, they will come right pretty quickly. And it's not the most high tinting of colour, but it is really pretty and I do use it quite a lot. Australian Grey is PBR7 and PY42, so a mix of brown and yellow actually. This is also granulating and opaque. It doesn't look grey to me, but apparently that's what grey is considered in Australia, so there we go. I have absolutely no idea what I was doing there with my hand. I'm doing well this video. Anyway, as you can see, it's a really nice neutral kind of buff titanium colour, or perhaps Naples red, but it's very useful for mixing with other colours and for things like stones and tree bark, at least Australian tree bark. Going into warm sepia, this one also runs really nicely and it's a lovely warm brown. It's darker than burnt umber, not quite as dark as a regular sepia, so I really like this colour and it's another favourite on the palette for me. Made with PR101, which it gets that reddish tint from, and PBK6, which is a black. So going back up to the top, we're going into Spectrum Red, which is actually made of two pigments, a red pigment and an orange one, and is supposedly opaque, although it seems quite transparent when painting it out. And next to it you can see I've got a bit of a tide mark on that Spectrum Crimson, so I will go over them again a bit later. But the Spectrum Red is a nice fiery red, probably helped by that orange in there, and is a good one in the palette. Although being opaque, perhaps not quite as wonderful as getting a transparent red, but whatever. I just wanted to have Spectrum Red, Spectrum Yellow and Spectrum Blue. Australian Red Gold, I love this colour, I love it so much. It's actually made of 3 pigments, and so it's one of those colours that's best put down on its own and not really mixed so much in other paints because it will start to get a bit muddy. The Lemon Yellow is made of a single pigment, is PY3, and I do find this one is a little more difficult to re-wet and perhaps isn't quite as pigmented as I would like. It's okay, but now I've used it for quite a long time, it's not really my favourite, so I don't know that I would get it again if I ever use the tube up. Australian Leaf Green Dark. Now this one has 4 pigments in, so really I wouldn't recommend mixing it with other colours, but it is a really nice dark leaf green and is fantastic for shadows and darker parts of the foliage, and it's a really good colour. I use this one along with the Australian Green Gold quite a lot together. And Australian Turquoise PG50. I originally thought this was cobalt teal, but it actually isn't. According to a website called Ferro.com, this is cobalt titanate green spinel. There you go, say that 5 times fast. And is sometimes possibly called cobalt turquoise, but if anyone knows, please let me know, because none of the usual websites seem to have an actual answer as to what this pigment is. But it's stunning, I really, really love it, and Australian Turquoise is my absolute favourite art spectrum colour that I have. Spectrum Blue, a mix of PB29 and PB15, which is ultramarine and phthalo blue. So it is somewhere in between the two. It's almost like a slightly granulated phthalo blue red hue, but yeah, it's okay. It's kind of not one that I'm super in love with. I think I would have preferred just to have an ultramarine on its own, but hey, it's one of the 3 spectrum colours that I have there. Prussian Blue. This is a PB27. It's pretty staining and is semi-transparent. This one's quite nice too. It's actually a little bit closer to the phthalo blue than I was expecting, although it does get quite a lot of darkness once you add layers onto it, and you can see it is blurring into the Flinders Blue Violet, which was still wet, and I had a lot of fun trying to stop them from merging too much. Going on to Flinders Red Violet, which is PV19, and funnily enough the same pigment as the Spectrum Crimson, but is so completely different when you look at it here. It always fascinates me when the same pigment is completely different from each other, and I really hope that I haven't just written it as PV19 and it's supposed to be something else, so if I have, let me know in the comments. But this is a nice deep kind of a purplish magenta, and as you can see, none of the swatches down there are dry, and so I kept getting them bleeding into each other. I did come along afterwards and fix this up. Yellow Ochre, PY42. That one runs quite a lot actually. I was once again quite surprised, and it's a very, very opaque and granulating ochre according to Art Spectrum's information page. And last one here is Payne's Grey, made up of phthalo blue and PBK6 and PV19. They seem to use that PV19 a lot in their collection, but it's a beautiful dark Payne's Grey and I like it a lot. Made a bit of a mess of those, unfortunately. Look at that, the state of it. Anyway, this is them all swatched out and dried. I did go over some of them again because this paper is really thirsty, and usually I will layer paints anyway. These paints do glaze well also, for the most part. Let's have a little look a bit more closely at some of them. You can see there is granulation in the Australian turquoise, although I find it's not as pronounced as other brands, and I really do love the way this one flows out onto the page. It's a really lovely colour, and it is still my favourite of the cobalt turquoises. The Flinders Blue Violet, or the Mineral Violet, you can see is very granulated. I think this one's granulating as well, unless it's the paper behaving strangely. Also in the Australian Leaf Green Dark there is some granulation going on as well. But otherwise most of them are pretty much a flat colour. There's a bit in the Australian Green Gold there. Even the Spectrum Blue, which has ultramarine in it, there's a tiny bit of granulation, but it doesn't seem to be that much, so I think the phthalo blue just dominates in there. And here are the other ones. The yellow ochre says it's granulating, but I'm not really seeing much in this one. The ochre is a really, really earthy colour. It's what I would think of as a really traditional ochre. As you can see here, it's really textured and it's almost like painting with clay. It's a very strange one, the yellow ochre. It's not my favourite, but I, for some reason, ended up buying the yellow ochre at the time. I think it was on sale for 70% off, and so I just grabbed it. Now, of course, the proof is in the painting, so I'm going to do a painting over here and we'll see how they go in that. In case you're wondering, that blue stuff is masking fluid. I put it on there to begin with and let it dry before I started painting. I'm going in with phthalo blue for the sky because out at Uluru the sky really is that colour. It's amazing, especially when you have the red earth in contrast with it. Okay, spoiler alert, this painting did not exactly work out as I wanted it to. I wasn't having the best day with painting, but I just persevered and I ended up getting something. Hopefully it gives you an idea of what the colours are going to look like. Down the ground here I mixed up some of that Pilbara Red with the Australian Red Gold, and then I've also got some Australian Green Gold in there. So mostly this painting is made up of just a few colours, the Australian ones, and I used the Pilbara Red for Uluru itself, and then I went in with some of that red gold because the Pilbara Red on its own was just way too strong. But I'm not going to complain about my painting too much because sometimes I get way too overly critical, and I think I'm just going to leave the critique to you, my wonderful viewers, and you can tell me if you think it's a good painting or if I failed miserably. I just wanted to take some time to thank you all so much for watching my videos and for subscribing. I think I'm hopefully at around 300 subscribers when this video comes out, and I am just so incredibly thankful that total strangers would watch my videos and support me by subscribing. It's such an amazing feeling, and I'm so incredibly grateful to all of you, if you've been here from the start or if you're new. And another thing I was going to mention is if you ever get the chance to go out to Uluru, or as they used to call it, Asrock, please do so. It is one of the most spectacular places I have ever been in my life. It's really, really spiritual. it's spooky that there's just this massive rock in the middle of nowhere, and it is huge. It is way bigger than I was expecting. Oh, and just a side note here, I'm using a latex glove to take off that dried masking fluid once the painting had dried. Such a mess. I really hate masking fluid. I was cursing myself the whole time for using it, but I wanted to keep those trees bare so that I could paint over the top of the rock and everything like that. But yeah, we spent about 5 days out at Uluru in 2015, and we drove all the way there from Melbourne. It's roughly around 2,000 kilometres one way, 2,500, so it took us a few days just to get there. And yeah, we had a great time. I applied for a media pass so that I could take photographs over all of those days and perhaps display them and, you know, maybe sell some stock photos, although I ended up deciding I didn't really want to do that. But I've got so many photos from Uluru and I thought I would use one today. I was going to do the archetypical whole entire rock photo, but I thought it would actually be more fun to paint just a portion of it. And this little pathway goes right up to the side of the rock and comes out onto a bit of a lookout and a balcony area, and it goes over the top of this natural kind of concavity in the earth where when it rains, and it does rain out there, the water actually cascades down the side of the rock, and you can see where that dark line is on the rock that I've painted. That's one of the channels. We happened to be there when it rained. The first couple of days when I took this photo, it was lovely and sunny, and the watering hole was bone dry. There was no water in it. I don't think it had rained for quite a long time. But then the heavens decided to open, and we went to check out the rock, and we came to this part and went to stand out over the watering hole so that we could see the water cascading down, and it's like waterfalls running off this rock, and it ran into this watering hole, and as we stood there it filled up and absolutely flooded out, and I've never seen anything like it in my life. It was just such an exciting and just magical experience. At the time, you were still allowed to climb the rock up to the top, but we opted not to. One, because it's quite disrespectful to the indigenous people there who have repeatedly asked tourists not to do it, but also because it was incredibly steep and I really don't like heights, and I was looking at it going, yeah, I'm just going to get halfway up there and then just not be able to move, and there were so many people and it was horrible. So what we did instead, and I'm so glad we did, is walk around the base of the rock, and I think it works out at around 10 kilometers, so it's a long way, but just amazing. Really, really fabulous place. The rock formations that come out from it are really interesting, and it's totally worth the long trip out there. And not far from it, maybe about 30 to 40 minutes drive, is another rock formation called Katajuta, and that was formerly called the Olgas and still is to some extent, but they do tend to use the indigenous names right now because it's better rather than using anglicised names for these rocks. But yeah, you can see I was trying to paint in some detail here, and the rock didn't turn out as wonderfully as I would have liked, but I just kept persevering and ended up doing quite a few layers. As you can see, the paints lend themselves well to layering, and they're lovely, for the most part transparent, and yeah, I really enjoy them. They work just as well as other professional paints in my opinion. They do dry a little bit harder than some other ones, so if you're looking at the honey based paints like Sennelier and M. Graham, these paints dry way harder than that. So they're okay in half pans, but they do get a bit desiccated if you leave them for too long. And I'm just trying to add in a bit of shadow here, even though it's not really in the photo itself. I made the mistake of putting some white ink on. I think I should have just left it off, but hey, what are you going to do? I've done it now, so I went around just with the ink to add in a few highlights. It just felt like it needed something, but I think I probably should have left it off the rock. Oh well, we live and learn, and it's not the end of the world if I don't do something exactly perfect. I tell myself that at least. And I just tried to get a bit more definition into there, although it's nowhere near as striated as the rock actually is. Alright, I'm admitting defeat on this one. I can do art, me! I just could not get it today. I tried and I just realised that I'm probably not going to make it any much better than this, so I'm leaving it. But anyway, I really hope you can see how the paints performed. It's definitely not the paint's fault in this case that the painting isn't very good. That's all on me today. Anyway, this is what I got today. We've got a lovely page spread here. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it's helped you get some more insight on Art Spectrum watercolours. I think I will have to do another painting soon with them and try some of the other colours as well. I really wanted to use the Australian turquoise, but unfortunately this picture did not kind of lend itself to that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. I will see you all again really soon. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Swatch you later. Bye!